Herstal, Belgium, November the 26th, 1926. John Moses Browning is sitting at his workbench at the Fabrique Nationale factory. He is 71 years old. He has spent the last several years working on the most ambitious pistol design of his life. A 9mm semi-automatic with a 13-round double-stack magazine, more capacity than any military pistol in the world, built around a locked breech recoil system he has been refining for decades. The design is advanced. It is not finished. Browning stands up from his workbench. He collapses. He is dead within minutes of a heart attack, on the floor of the Belgian factory where he spent so much of the last 30 years of his life. The pistol on his bench has no trigger group. It has no production specification. It has no name. It will eventually be given all three of those things by a Belgian engineer named Dieudonné Saive, who will take Browning's unfinished work, improve it in ways Browning's Colt patents had prevented him from doing himself, and produce the weapon that Fabrique Nationale will release to the world in 1935 as the Grande Puissance, the high power. It will go on to arm more than 50 countries. It will be carried simultaneously by British Commandos and German Waffen-SS troops in the same European theatre during the same war, the only production pistol in history to achieve that distinction. And the factory where Browning died building it will be seized by the German army in 1940 and turned to the purpose of producing it for the enemy. The weapon Browning built for the Allies was produced in hundreds of thousands for the Wehrmacht by the men he had worked alongside his entire career. John Moses Browning was the most prolific firearms designer in American history. At the time of his death, he held 128 patents. He had designed the Colt single-action army, the Winchester Model 1886, the Browning automatic rifle, every belt-fed machine gun used by the United States military in the First World War, and the M1911 pistol that American soldiers would carry through the Second World War. He was not a man who ran out of ideas. He was a man who was prevented by his own earlier success from using them. The problem with designing the high power was the M1911. Browning had sold those patents to Colt. The swinging link barrel locking system, the single-stack magazine, the specific takedown sequence, all of it belonged to Colt, and Browning could not reuse it. He had to design around his own work. This constraint produced something unexpected. Forced to find a new solution for the barrel locking mechanism, Browning developed a cam-operated system in which a shaped lug on the underside of the barrel cammed downward during recoil to unlock the breech. It was mechanically simpler than the swinging link. It was more reliable. It became, within decades, the standard mechanism for virtually every successful combat pistol that followed. The Beretta, the Sig Sauer, the Glock, every modern service pistol in use today. Browning, prevented from copying his own design, produced something better. He did not live to see it manufactured. Dieudonné Saive was 30 years old when Browning died. He had worked with Browning at Fabrique Nationale and understood his design philosophy better than anyone alive. He also had an advantage Browning had not possessed. By 1928, the Colt M1911 patents had expired. Saive immediately incorporated elements of the 1911's takedown system into the design, simplifying it further. He refined the double-stack magazine from Browning's original 16-round prototype to a 13-round production version that balanced capacity with grip dimensions. He simplified the trigger mechanism, though the resulting design, which routed the trigger bar around the outside of the magazine well, introduced the heavy trigger pull that the high power would carry as its only consistent criticism for the next 9 decades. The pistol that emerged from Saive's revisions in 1935 was chambered in 9mm parabellum, carried 13 rounds, weighed just under 2 pounds empty, and printed groups of 2.5 inches at 50 yards, despite its imperfect trigger. The French military, for whom the entire project had been commissioned in the first place, passed on it. Belgium adopted it. Lithuania adopted it. China ordered it. And in September 1939, as Britain and France declared war on Germany, the pistol had been in production at Fabrique Nationale for 4 years, with approximately 35,000 units delivered. It was, by every measure, the finest military pistol in the world. The man whose name it carries died before a single production example was built. The man who actually finished it spent 4 years watching his country be occupied and his factory turned against the alliance he had risked his life to serve. History tends to remember the name on the patent. It is worth remembering the name on the drawing that made the patent into a pistol. Germany invaded Belgium on the 10th of May 1940. 18 days later, the Belgian army surrendered. The Fabrique Nationale plant at Herstal was captured virtually intact. The machinery, the tooling, the production specifications, and the skilled workforce that had been building the high power for 5 years. The Wehrmacht installed managers and technicians from Deutsche Waffen- und Munitionsfabriken and immediately resumed production. The pistol was redesignated the Pistole 640B, B for Belgisch, Belgian. More than 300,000 were produced at Herstal for the German military between 1940 and 1944, issued primarily to Waffen-SS units and Fallschirmjäger paratroopers. These were not inferior copies. They were genuine Fabrique Nationale products, built on the same machines, by many of the same workers, to the same specifications as the pistols being carried by British officers on the other side of the Channel. The Belgian workers producing those guns had no choice. Occupied Belgium operated under conditions that made refusal a death sentence. Some slowed production deliberately. Some introduced subtle defects where they could. The official record is incomplete on the scale of this quiet resistance, but accounts that survive describe workers who understood exactly what they were building and for whom, and found whatever small ways they could to make the product worse. How successful those efforts were is difficult to measure. 300,000 pistols were delivered. They worked. The only difference between an Allied example and a German example was the proof marks. Allied guns carried the FN logo. German guns carried the Waffen eagle. The internals were identical. If a German soldier ran out of ammunition and a British soldier happened to be nearby, the magazines were interchangeable. The war was creating a situation of almost absurd mechanical symmetry. The same pistol, built in the same factory, was being drawn from holsters on both sides of every engagement in which it appeared. Now, before we continue, if you are following this, hit subscribe. It costs nothing, and it helps the channel grow. The Allied response to the fall of Herstal was shaped by one man's extraordinary courage and memory. Dieudonné Saive had escaped Belgium when the Germans arrived, eventually reaching Britain. He had brought with him what manufacturing drawings he could carry. The original technical drawings for the high power had been sent to Vichy, France for safekeeping, and were sequestered there for the duration of the war, inaccessible to the Allies. Saive sat down with a handful of pre-war production examples found in England and reverse-engineered the entire weapon from memory and physical examination, producing a complete set of manufacturing drawings sufficient for mass production. Those drawings went to the John Inglis Company of Toronto, Ontario, the same factory already producing the Bren gun under British contract. In April 1943, the Chinese Nationalist government requested 180,000 high-power pistols for use against the Japanese. The contract went to Inglis. The Chinese specified that the pistols include a detachable wooden shoulder stock, similar to the Mauser broom handle that Chinese troops had carried for decades and trusted completely. Inglis produced 2 versions: the Chinese contract version with the shoulder stock groove and adjustable tangent rear sight, graduated to an ambitious 1,000 yards, and a simplified version without the stock for British Commonwealth and Allied use. British Commandos, the Special Air Service, the Special Operations Executive, and Canadian Infantry received the Inglis version. American covert operatives received it. It was compact, powerful, reliable, and held 13 rounds, nearly double the capacity of the American M1911 it frequently operated alongside. The Inglis factory that had been building Bren guns for British infantry was now building high powers for Chinese soldiers, British Special Forces, and Canadian paratroopers simultaneously. A British SAS trooper carrying an Inglis high power and a Waffen-SS Fallschirmjäger carrying a Pistole 640B were carrying the same pistol. On the same day, in the same country. The legacy of the high power extends well beyond the war that defined its reputation. Saive, the engineer who finished the design after Browning's death and then reconstructed it from memory to keep it in Allied hands, went on to design the FAL battle rifle, the weapon NATO adopted as its standard infantry rifle in the 1950s, carried by the armies of over 90 countries and used in more conflicts than any other modern military rifle. The double-stack single-feed magazine Saive developed for the high power became the standard configuration for every high-capacity pistol magazine in the world. The cam-operated barrel locking system Browning was forced to invent because he couldn't reuse his own patents, became the mechanism inside virtually every modern service pistol. The Glock, the Beretta, the Sig Sauer, the Smith & Wesson military and police. Each of them locks and unlocks its barrel, using the principle Browning developed in Utah in the early 1920s to work around patents he owned himself. After 82 years of continuous production, Fabrique Nationale discontinued the high power in February 2018. New production versions reappeared almost immediately from other manufacturers, and FN itself returned to production with an updated version in 2022. The pistol Browning died building, that Germany seized and produced for the Wehrmacht, that Saive reconstructed from memory in an English workshop, that Canadian workers machined for Chinese soldiers fighting the Japanese. That pistol is still being made today. More than 50 countries have carried it as a standard service weapon. It holds the distinction, which no other production firearm shares, of having seen general issue on both sides of the same World War. John Moses Browning died on the floor of the factory where it was being built. He never held a finished example. The pistol he left unfinished on that workbench in Herstal became, in the hands of Saive and the production engineers at Inglis, and the Belgian workers who built it under occupation, and the soldiers who carried it on both sides, the most widely adopted military pistol of the 20th century. It is still being manufactured. It is still being carried. The cam it introduced is still locking and unlocking in the hands of soldiers who have never heard the names of the men who designed it. That is the only kind of immortality available to an engineer. Browning earned it twice, once with the 1911 and once with the pistol he died trying to finish. The world is still carrying both.